Hi, I'm Suzanne. I am a videographer and photographer, and I am here because this month is International Women's Day on the 8th of March. In keeping with this year's theme of #ChooseToChallenge, I've been working with 9 brilliant women creating a photo series to represent different stereotypes that modern Australian women face. Alongside this photo series, we've recorded a conversation on each of these topics to help create a dialogue around them for International Women's Day. You're going to get one a day until the 9th of March, so stay tuned. Today's topic is #ChooseToChallengeIntelligence, and I have this conversation with the brilliant Linette. If you want to see the photos of Linette, then head to my Instagram at suzanne.was.here. Hi everyone, today we are talking about intelligence, and to discuss this with me I have the fantastic
Linette Voller. Hello.
Hello! So tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm a design manager at a software company. I am originally from the UK and now live in Australia.
And I met you for the first time about 2.5, 3 years ago, I think it was. Crazy that it's that long.
Like that, yeah.
And I was immediately in love with you and reached out to our mutual friend to be able to contact you because I had a big old girl crush. Just immediately I found you really engaging, but also I think the way that you speak is immediately displays your intelligence. And I think that's a large part of why I asked you here to discuss intelligence with me.
Thank you very much.
So some of the challenges for women around intelligence, and both of us having tech in our background, I have a degree in information technology, I think in that area in particular, it's really stark how prejudiced people are against women and their abilities in these areas. So the first story that always comes to mind for me was when I was at a computer market because I was going to be building my first computer while I was studying IT, and my partner, now husband at the time, partner at the time, was with me. And when I went to one of the tables I think we were buying the motherboard at that point, and the man said to me, "Oh, you're so lucky to have your boyfriend building a computer for you." And he wasn't even talking to him. I was talking to him. And I was like, no, I was chill about it because it wasn't unusual. But I was like, no, I study IT. I'm building it for myself. And he goes, "Oh, you're a smart girl." And I was like, I'm out. Bye. And it's crazy that that's I feel like one of the clearest, most sounds like it's written for a sitcom moments. So it displays it really well, but it was not in isolation by any means.
Yeah. Well, on building computers, I used to work as an IT trainer, and I'd teach various different courses. There were some programming courses, some security courses, networking courses. But the intro course, you start from building a computer from bare bones up. Mm-hmm. Now, I trained this course very regularly. But there was one week where one of my colleagues happened to be training this course. They put together this old server, and it just was not working. It was beeping and beeping and beeping. There were all sorts of things wrong with it. Took it apart, put it back, took it apart, put it back. It just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. So he came out of the classroom he was teaching in and came into the room and asked if I'd give a hand. And I was very happy to. We'd worked together for a while. So I go into the room. Now, it just so happens that because it was an off week, I was not wearing what I normally would wear. So I'd normally wear trousers, a shirt, try and look, competent, smart, how I might think of what smart looks like. Yeah. And I had to be very aware that I might be climbing on top of tables or under tables to get to routers or cabling or things like that. Yeah. Whereas because I was on an off week, I decided to go in the other direction. So I was in hyper-femme mode. I had a full circle swooshy skirt, had little kitten heels on, had a little bit of a low-cut, quite form-fitting top, and I'm quite busty. And I had a little bit of makeup on as well. So I walk into this classroom, and I'm not paying that much attention to the class itself at this point.
You have your task to do.
I've got my task. So I go over there and I start ripping the guts out of this computer, putting them back together. And as I go, I launch into my very practiced spiel of talking about the CPU buses and reseating the CPU and the various different expansion card slots and RAM and things like that, because that's what I do. And so I do this, I pull it all apart and I put it all back together, power it on. First time, it absolutely starts.
You're like,
and I look up at the room. And
not thinking anything about it at this point because it's just your daily...
This is what I do. Yeah. And I'm used to doing that. And people, honestly... On the first day of my course, I often did have to prove something, but because there was a kind of there's this young girl who's coming to teach me about computers. Yeah. But so I did have to struggle there sometimes, but you know, this was not necessarily something I was used to extreme reactions to. But when I looked up, there was this room full of guys, and there were some of them literally with their mouth open, just looking at me and looking at the computer, and just with a do not compute face on.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd seen people sort of have an eyebrow raise and a little nod when I'd done this before in my regular garb. But then I realised in this kind of more feminine look, they just didn't understand some of them. And I must admit, I played on it a little bit, and so kind of did well, there you go, have fun, guys, flipped my hair and walked out.
And of course, you don't just have to be studying something to do with computers to be intelligent.
Yes, absolutely.
You told me before we started a story about a manager of yours, and I would love for you to share that again. So
this was, for a while, I worked as a senior technical support engineer for enterprises. So what that meant was when a large company's IT department couldn't fix the problem, they would call me and say, okay, please help.
Yeah.
So I was a specialist. And there was one particular situation, so highly critical system, and I'd been on a call with a customer for 8 hours because there was a lot that needed to be done, but it had been a full day. Now, at that time, it wasn't so much hot desks, but the managers were kind of hot desking around. We were in little cubes of 4 desks, and there'd be one empty, and a manager could sit and do their work in the same cube.
Yep.
And this time, my manager, who had been my manager for, I think at that point, about a year, happened to be in my cube this time.
A manager to you in your role as a senior specialist?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And at the end of this 8-hour day, we had this routine where we'd hand off the call to another call centre if it needed continual monitoring. So I passed it on to one of my colleagues in the next call centre. And my boss turns around to me and says, "You're actually quite technical." And this was my manager. This was my manager who had me as one of his team who was providing senior technical support to enterprises.
And was surprised at what you'd achieved.
Yeah, and was surprised to hear me go into the details of Unix and networking.
Yeah, of your job.
Of my job.
Yeah.
Of the job I was being paid for, the job that he apparently was evaluating me for in previous annual reviews.
I'm really curious, like from his perspective, was it that you were just a diversity hire and he didn't actually expect you to do what you were hired to do? I wonder what was going on in his mind at that moment, because he's saying this obviously thinking it's a compliment, you know, but just the incredible insult that comes with the fact that he thought that was a compliment. I'd love to know what was happening in his brain at that point.
My theory is that I think a lot of people have an internal dichotomy of technical ability and soft skills. And the fact that we even call them soft skills is an interesting reflection on ideas of femininity and what people should be doing. And I think in his mind, because I was recognised as being very good at chatting to customers and talking them off the ledge and calming them down. And
so that was all that you had?
Yeah, I think he
People
thought
skills was it.
I was the one that kind of just schmoozed and calmed people while they sorted stuff out.
But what do you think are some of the times where you've really challenged these assumptions that are made about you, aside from incidentally doing your job?
Oh gosh, well no, sorry, that just really reminded me of something else with this same manager. So there was a national award for women in IT that was happening, and people from my company were being put forward for various categories. Someone suggested that I be put forward for the technical category, and my boss said, "Oh well, you know, there's going to be programmers and stuff in that category. Maybe Rising Star would be better, something like that." And you know, I took that on a little bit, and I thought,
I'm not technical unless I'm a programmer.
Yeah, I'm not technical unless I'm a programmer. And I have a little bit of that chip on my shoulder to this day. I'm not technical enough. So we put me forward for the technical category. Good. And I won. So, you know, here
not
I was.
Technical enough.
Yeah, I have actually won a national award for being a technical woman in IT.
Congratulations.
And yet still, I worry that I'm not technical enough. because I have absorbed some of those messages of, what technical looks like and what, smart is. And there's always that extra barrier or boundary.
Yeah. We as women, we have these things where we feel like we have to qualify that intelligence. And you were talking to me earlier about your IQ from when you were quite young.
Yeah. So when I was 12, I took the Mensa test. And once you hit the age of 12, you can take the adult one. So that's why I took it at that point. And it was really about desperately wanting to prove that I was intelligent. And, I took the test. And actually at the time, it was a room full of people in this hotel before going in for doing the test. So this big foyer, and there were lots of people there, and they were looking at crosswords, and they were reading very thick tomes and being all very intellectual. And there was this 12-year-old girl with 2 pigtails. Yep. I think I had bright yellow dungarees on at the time.
And probably just so excited to be there.
And I was super excited. I was like, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
And people were giving me side eye a lot in there. And I went in and I did the test, and it contained a few different tests, and I did them all. And I came out, and there was part of me, I was super excited, but having been in that room earlier, there was part of me thinking, how is this going to go? Because, I'm not like those other, very intellectual, because they looked intellectual.
Yes.
They had the glasses and the thoughtful crosswording.
And I imagine most of them were men too.
Yeah, there were a lot of men in that room. There were even 2 people playing chess. It was almost like a stereotype kind of like
how you write it for a sitcom.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I got the letter later on that had my IQ in and said that I was in the top 0.001% of the population for IQ, and it was in the top, like even within their group, it was the top tier of
the people who performed on that day.
Or in their society at all, because it was for an intelligent society.
Right, of course, okay.
So I was in the top band.
Yes.
And oh my word, I lauded that around. I was probably insufferable as a child. Yeah, but who wants to be like, what would you like for dinner? Did you know? I'm very intelligent. But I did really hold that as a kind of anchor to my personality, a real validation. When you look at the stereotype of what's an intellectual woman, she tends to be unattractive. She doesn't tend to dress feminine. She doesn't wear makeup. She doesn't have humour or warmth.
Yes.
Intelligent women are often painted as the kind of sucking a lemon, squinty barren spinster who works in academia and has like the librarian who never managed to find a man, so kind of looked
they're not
after
a family
books.
Person.
Yeah.
If you're a mother, there's not intelligence associated with that.
Absolutely.
Which the incredible intelligence that mothers have in raising our society.
Absolutely. And I mean, one of the things, so the company I work for, one of the charities we support is a charity specifically aimed at educating women in more disadvantaged countries. And one of the reasons for that is when you educate the women, they tend to have a few less children, there's less child mortality, but it's a more reasonable and kind of supportable amount of children.
And they educate.
But they educate their children. Yeah. So, whatever the gender of their children they have, those children are much more likely to be literate if the mother is literate.
Yes.
Because if the father is literate but the mother is not literate, in those societies often the father goes out to work, the mother stays at home and looks after the children. She can't pass that skill along.
Yes.
But as soon as you start educating the women, it uplifts the entire society. And it's, hugely powerful, and it's amazing to see the impact that has. And it's kind of interesting, now I'm hopping topics slightly, but that because of the dichotomy of, okay, if you're intelligent, you have to kind of look a certain way.
Yes.
Then there can be the urge to kind of over-index on looking the other way and saying, oh, well, if I'm looking very intelligent, then I can't be very feminine. And so there can be a rejection of the female. And it is weird that the way that society likes to put these kind of dichotomies in place, what's male, what's female, what's intelligent, what's beautiful, and put them on a binary which they don't have to be on.
Yeah,
but
they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah, and I remember once I'd kind of got more into the university age, how much I took it as a compliment when people said, oh, you're not like other girls. because but that's the soup we were in. And I used to be, I can see that I had some internalized misogyny, and that I would look down on feminists. I would look down on pretty women because I had put myself into that box.
But also you've spent how many years now unlearning that, and that's brilliant. I mean, you're challenging your own unconscious biases that, I mean, who knows what part of society, really is the reasoning for that, but you've spent your adult life undoing those learnings. Yeah. And I think we're definitely getting a lot better with this. There are greater expectations from women in the scope of intelligence. And I think there's still a long way to go just with the assumptions that are made. I can't think of any specific examples in my life where it has been women who have been surprised, if they're a part of the issue, are discouraging of it, because a man won't be attractive to you if you're smarter than them. Similar story to when we talked about physical strength with Tiana. She was saying how her strength intimidated men, and it's us having something doesn't take away from men. And I think women using this stick to beat other women and tell them not to be intelligent is such a strange thing as well. But again, I think we're getting better with this.
And I mean, I think there are generally kind of a lot of double standards there. I do remember situations where I've been surprised when a woman's intelligent because she's been beautiful, and I've been like,
because of her appearance. Yeah.
And because I've internalized that. But then I think we have a lot of those messages. So, and this might be a bit of a tangent, but I remember, so I'm attracted to both men and women and other genders, but I found myself holding myself to body and image standards that I didn't hold a female partner to. And so I'd look at myself in the mirror and go, I'm so ugly, I'm so fat, I'm so this, I'm so that. And I'd look at this other person who was a little bit larger than me, and I would say, this person is amazing and beautiful and an absolute goddess. And yet I could hold that double standard there. And it is weird the way you can hold these kind of two conflicting ideas and still have this internalized, no, women can't be beautiful and smart. And yes, this ex of mine, she was amazingly, fantastically smart. Yeah. And I didn't feel threatened by that at all.
Yes,
But that hasn't always been the case for me. Yeah. And I'd see other intelligent women and I would see them as competition as well. Yeah. Because it felt like there is the one space
seat at the table.
Yeah, there's allowed to be the one token woman who's smart. Yeah. And any other women
fight to the death for it.
Fighting women. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
This series is really focused on modern Australia, but just because the global issues are so much greater that we could try to tackle something like this. But I hope that it is getting better for women. I mean, I know that there are a lot of these universities and schools are working to try and show women that they can do, particularly in science and technology, they can perform just as well as the boys and the men. I mean, even just going into the expectations around, video games were originally created as a gender-neutral toy. But because all toys in stores were divided, these are for girls and these are for boys, at some point somebody went, where are we going to put the video games? I guess the boys. And so it became a boys' toy. Yeah. Even though it was never designed to be specifically for boys. Yeah. So I think there are just all of these things that are sitting into a categorization of gender for absolutely no reason, but we as a society have taken them on board and taken them as law, and we're now trying to pick that apart because, as it is inaccurate, there are people from any gender who want to do a thing and don't want to be told they can't because of a gender. Yeah. What would you like to see people do as a wider community, like within society, to challenge these issues for women around intelligence?
So, I mean, I think that it's going to have to be a multi-pronged approach. I mean, there is the, women keep doing stuff and don't be ashamed of your smarts, and don't try and dumb yourself down to attract a partner. Yes. But, it's very easy to point at women and say, you're the problem, you need to fix it. And as we've seen, women can demonstrate startling intelligence, and either it's not recognised or it does repulse some people. So, the solution isn't only with women. Before we were recording this, I remember you mentioning how you were in a hardware store and that everything was being directed to your partner rather than you. And that when you told your father, he said, "Oh, well, if I was in that situation, I would just walk away," because then
he as the partner would walk away.
So that way, the person working in the shop either had to run through the store to chase down this
person who wasn't the one talking to them,
or actually say, "Oh, wait, there is only one other person in this conversation. I'm actually gonna have to talk to this woman."
Talk to the woman? What? Oh my goodness! What? Maybe the woman wants to know about hardware.
What? And so being allies and stepping away if you're male or male presenting and someone is directing their technical or hardware kind of stuff towards you, or intellectual stuff. And it's a woman in your presence that's actually kind of doing the tech.
I think the other thing that we can really do as women is promote and celebrate other women's achievements, whether they seem directly and obviously intellectual, like winning a Smarts Award, or if it's just something that they've achieved in any space, because I think that really promotes the fact that women are doing these things. And I think the fact that we've had to have women-specific awards to try and promote this, I mean, it's great because it's getting that out there, but it also sits us in a category as other than when we do have the ability to compete at this level on a gender non-specific categorization.
And just in a really tactical, practical way, if you're in a meeting, regardless of your own gender, and a woman raises an idea and it gets a bit lost,
and then a man raises it.
Well, either if a man raises it or it just
or it just gets lost.
Then take the point to either say, oh, I think what Sarah was saying was really worth digging into more, or I agree with Sarah, or that kind of thing. Just acknowledging it, giving it a little bit more airspace, or supporting it in general. I mean, that's a really basic, easy thing that can be done, but can make such a huge difference. And I think also, if we can do anything to expand the concept of intelligence, because again, I mean, I think it's easy for both of us because we have fallen into that more stereotypically male-focused technology sector. And it wasn't always male, like the original computer programmers were female. Sidebar.
Let's do a history lesson later.
It is easy to then start equating intelligence with the sciences. And because think about intelligence in areas which are more traditionally male-dominated, whereas intelligence shows in a variety of different ways.
Even just emotional intelligence and how underrated that is. And it's something that society kind of strips men of, but women have in abundance. Let's have some appreciation for that.
In some ways, there's the whole conversation about what is intelligence. Is it rote learning? Is it remembering facts? Is it being able to process different pieces of information and then come to some conclusion which is surprising or groundbreaking? So if you take that paradigm as what intelligence is, problem solving doesn't just happen in maths. It doesn't just happen in IT. It doesn't just happen in mechanical engineering. There's a lot of problem solving that happens in a lot of different disciplines. There's a lot of pulling together different threads, and so recognizing the intelligence that is inherent with that, and not just defaulting to the rocket scientist kind of intellectual model.
This is the perfect place to drop one of my all-time favorite quotes that I'm going to 100% misquote, but the general concept is, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life believing that it is a failure. And I believe this so strongly. As somebody who used to do tutoring in school as well, as in I would tutor people, I found that everybody can get it. It's not that nobody can understand it. It's that you've got to find what learning works for them. Because humans are pattern solving, a pattern recognition, problem solving machines. We just don't all do it the same way.
Yes.
And I think the idea that a gender can have an impact on how likely you are to be intelligent or not is completely illogical.
For a while, we've had a very, very narrow band of what intellectual, and that's an sidebar as well, what intelligence is. And when you think of what intellectual is, because actually intellectual isn't just, what an intelligence score would be. If you say, what's an intellectual? Immediately, there's a load of class assumptions.
Yes.
There's a load of like hobby assumptions.
Yes.
That very term intellectual has a whole load of connotations, even beyond like raw intelligence.
Yes. Intelligence, it's really interesting that for women, intelligence has such a physical, a visual alignment, which I don't think we do in the same way for men. And I think that's been represented in, your story about putting together the computer on the day when you were wearing your skirt and your makeup. And
there is that kind of quite a common dichotomy, beauty versus brains. There's even TV shows that have been based on that. So you either can spend time on learning or you can spend time on putting makeup on.
Yes, yeah.
So
and nobody can do both.
No.
It's impossible.
Absolutely impossible. I mean, oh my God, as soon as you put paint on your face, your brain falls out the back. It's terrible. Yeah. It's a pain.
What's going to be really important as a society is that we recognise that intelligence isn't an appearance. It isn't a physical attribute. And so as much as we're getting better with seeing that women can be intelligent, and we need to recognise that even more still, we need to recognise that a woman, regardless of the way she appears, can be intelligent.
Yep.
I mean, the perfect example for this is Legally Blonde. And the fact that, her knowledge around things that are considered the bimbo girl dumb things, like you were saying, you had that unconscious bias.
Yep.
Those became the ways in which she solved the case. And that nobody else who was there would have had the value to do. I think the point that movie made about intelligence is really poignant, and it's the ultimate recognition of this, because I think it's really interesting to look at in media, whether that's fictional or news, how we are representing women, how we are representing each of these topics, because culture is changed by these kinds of mediums.
I mean, fundamentally, it's very easy, I think, to point to anything and say the problem with this is that you look like this or you behave like this. But actually, it's a straw man. That's not the problem. It's an inherent unvaluing of women, which manifests in certain judgments.
Yeah. So then as a community, we want to give other people the space and the support to be intelligent, to grow their intelligence in the way that makes the most sense for them, and reap the benefits for society then.
Yeah, absolutely. When we all come together, I think it's amazing the problems that we can solve, as long as we can come together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
It's been wonderful.
Yep.
I want to do it again. Thank you.